Hi, my name is Paige Garner, and this is my project analysis for O Pioneers by Willa Cather. O Pioneers was written in 1913 by Willa Cather and tells the story of Alexandra Bergson, the daughter of a Swedish immigrant. When Alexandra's father passes away, he leaves the farm under the care of Alexandra, despite her having two older brothers. He makes this decision knowing that Alexandra knows more about the land than his other children, and in the end, his instincts are right. Throughout the story of Alexandra and her brothers' lives in Nebraska, we see many themes that were studied throughout this semester in class. Specifically, my project will examine how Cather's book relates to the following themes we studied this semester: nature, our teacher, dangerous spaces, small towns versus big cities, and migration. One of the most prevalent themes in this book is nature, and specifically Alexandra's relationship with the world around her. Alexandra succeeds where her family members have failed because she submits to the land and sees herself as belonging to the land and not the other way around. This can be seen when Alexandra explains that she has no personality apart from the soil, showing that nature is an intertwined part of her essence and existence. The theme heavily relates to other passages we saw in our Nature, Our Teacher unit. The way Alexandra views nature is similar to that of William Cullen Bryant in his piece Thanatopsis. Bryant describes nature as having an eloquence of beauty, showing that he had a similar appreciation for nature as Alexandra. Both seem to strive to want to learn from nature instead of forcing it to bend at their will. The next theme that is seen in O Pioneers that relates to our class is the presence of dangerous spaces. Much of nature and wilderness described in this story gives the book an eerie feeling, but this emotion is especially heightened at the end during the violent death of Emil and Marie. As they lay bleeding and moaning in the orchid, the reader is left with a clear picture of a gothic and dangerous space. During our unit, Dangerous Spaces, many of the gothic texts we read had similar tragic themes such as this one. A similar ending and theme is seen in Nathaniel Hawthorne's short story, The Birthmark. Both men are so blinded by emotion that they are willing to go to extremes. Emil risking a relationship with a married woman, and Almer trying to make his wife perfect. Georgiana's death, described as the parting breath of the now perfect woman, creates the same theme of dangerous spaces as Emil and Marie's death in O Pioneers. Much of this story's beginning centers around the backstory of how the Bergsons came to live in Nebraska. From what Mr. Bergson describes, it can be inferred that they lived in a more populated area than where they currently resided in Norway Creek. He describes the lack of human landmarks as the most depressing and disheartening. This leads to the theme of small towns versus big cities and the way this impacts the characters. It is obvious that Mr. Bergson knows that life has more to offer than the cards they have currently been dealt. This attitude and theme of small towns versus big spaces is very similar to that found in Our Town by Thornton Wilder. Wilder's character, Miss Gibbs, has lived in the small town of Grover's Corner for her entire life but desires something more. She explains to her friend how it is the dream of her life to see Paris, France. The last theme I want to examine for this project is the theme of migration. One of the most clear examples of this theme is Alexandra's parents and their journey to the New World. Mr. Bergson is described as struggling to find happiness in the land he migrated to, even describing how he made but little impression upon the wild land he had come to tame. This supports the theme of migration in the story, showing that it is often a sacrifices made by people wanting to find a better life. This theme of finding difficulties in migration is also seen in passages such as Just Jen's Who's Irish. Although their problems are slightly different, both stories represent the struggles that come alongside migrating to a new area. Jen's story follows the life of Natalie and her struggles raising a daughter differently than the way she was raised. Despite her mother being alive, Natalie describes her life as having no one to turn to. This loss of a family member is similar in some ways to the loss that Mr. Bergson felt when his two children that came between Lou and Emil both died. This concludes the end of my final project on O Pioneers. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed.